Hi, good morning, all. My name is Maya Jean, and I'm a student from Hostos Community College. And I'm doing this research project with a couple of my partners under my mentor, Dr. Wolf. So we're going to be speaking on unveiling the implicit biases in AI, a focus on the impact on marginalized communities. So there's two types of biases. We also have some posters up here up front that I'll show you later that focus on, one focuses on implicit, the other on explicit. So implicit bias is usually unconscious. It's just the brain trying to speed up information. And an unfortunate thing that happens is sometimes it creates a confirmation bias. So for example, if you don't like the color yellow, you will assume lemons are bad or bananas are bad. You won't like them. So that's one thing that is using technology. And with that, technology kind of makes those assumptions. So we also have explicit bias, which are just conscious biases that are formed by attitudes, feelings, or behaviors towards certain communities. We focus on artificial intelligence, which is a human formulated code with the ability to analyze, process, and predict information. We intend to show how digital tracking, automated decision making creates algorithms that target, discourage, and ultimately dictate the quality of life of marginalized communities and the poor. So some of these marginalized communities are categorized in two ways: impotent poor, which are individuals that are incapable of working, and then we have the able poor, which are able-bodied individuals that are capable of working. Some of these marginalized communities are Black, immigrants, indigenous, unpopular religious groups, sexual minorities, mentally and physically disabled, single mothers, orphans, and elderly. So here's some significant figures and theories we have researched on. Josiah Quincy III, you're gonna hear like this rhetoric a lot. He claims that poverty isn't from financial difficulty, but from bad habits. And that unfortunately rings through our society today with like a lot of our social programs and just in politics as well, and just socially. Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell, he had a case in which he approved of involuntary sterilization of poor and marginalized communities. And then we have Franklin D. Roosevelt, which did launch a lot of programs or relief programs, but they were unfortunately at the time targeted mainly towards the white community. So scientific charity is a method that separates deserving and undeserving poor, basically saying that benefits or assistance relies on if you deserve it, if you need it. Basically, yeah, just judging you and your ability to get the assistance you need. Eugenics, which is the reproduction based on the belief of superiority. So many people, or like this system, also believes that certain people shouldn't be able to produce, or like you'd have a lower quality of offspring. And then within this time period, the separation of African American poverty came through, and it was called the Negro problem. It was sorry, the Negro problem. It was ignored and used to develop technologies to discourage non-whites from seeking aid. So what is automating inequality and who is benefiting? So some of the groups that are benefiting from AI and these technologies are police, courts, medical, educational, and religious systems, government aid programs, government agencies, airports, etc. So some of these systems or like relief systems are the Federal Emergency Relief Administration, which is commodities and cash for families, the CCC and the CWA, which provides work on infrastructure, construction of public facilities, etc. We have ACS, Child Protective Services, SNAP, which is supplemental food benefits, Medicare, which is healthcare for the elderly and disabled, and then Medicaid, which is low income healthcare. And then some of the software that is used is facial recognition by use of camera, voice recognition by use of microphones, and then algorithms that target like specific traits and are used to classify individuals in groups, and ultimately it classifies what you can and cannot do, what benefits you can or cannot receive. Um, and then specifically, we have Planet Palantir, which is a data collection and analysis for government use, and that is used by government agencies like the Department of Defense, Department of Justice, Homeland Security, and ICE. Then Pedro, which uses historical crime rates and images that are similar to Google Maps to produce algorithms to predict crime. And what happens there is that when they're predicting crime, they will predict where they are policing more and where they have more security. And then Shot Spotter, which is a noise recorder. So there is the poorhouse, the regulation of poverty. So in the 19th century, the poorhouse tried to dictate and regulate poverty through fuel, food, medical care, clothing, housing, jobs, education, and habits and behaviors. That still rings through today, but in the 20th to 21st century, it adds limited access to public housing, policing of labor, how much you can and cannot make before you're able to get assistance or before you're negated from existence, assistance, your spending, sexuality, and your parenting. And then a continuation in the 1800s. These specific housings were sold to the highest bidder, and those bidders would profit from resident labor. They would only house those that were on government assistance or ill, old, youth, inmates, etc. The funding for these systems, again, profit that the bidder made from the housing was from the labor of inmates and selling of the cadavers of the residents. There was rampant sexual abuse, and inmates couldn't vote, marry, or hold office. Present day, these poorhouses are emergency rooms, mental health facilities, prisons, public housing, graffiti-filled infrastructure, environments where there is rampant prostitution and drug use, loitering, subway fare evasion, and highways and prisons in close proximity. So methods used to surveil, police, and control aid to marginalized communities. In the 19th century was when the idea of caseworkers and investigators for these assistants were assigned. Eugenics was used, questionnaires, photographs, fingerprints, etc. They also were allowed to perform sterilizations in these communities. They judged your intellect, your merit or demerit. Darker skinned individuals were labeled as degenerate, and then logbooks were kept, which were kept in a location called the data clearinghouse just to keep all of this information together. In the 20th to 21st century, we still see some of these uses, like from the caseworkers, investigators, and questionnaires, etc., but as well as a judgment of your socioeconomic background, your education, your zip code, the historical crime rate of your environment, police and arrest data, your social media is used, there is drone surveillance used, and there is hiring tools that can discriminate on disability, on gender, etc. And then wiretapping and sound sensors are also used to discriminate what happens in the location, like if there's shootings, if there's arguments, or just whatever that could be used against the location. So the impact and effect on marginalized societies. Um, these systems were built to maintain classist, racist, and capitalistic and opportunistic ideologies that in turn produce marginalized families and individuals that are discouraged and deviated from seeking or building the tools needed to overcome such implemented oppression. So here we just have an equation. These systems implement biased methods to make receiving assistance or advocacy difficult. Then individuals and communities feel deterred and defeated, thus they fail to advocate for their needs, and that equals to the quality of life going down and systematic oppression being upheld. And then we have an interpretation of the feedback loop of injustice. There's unresolved trauma within society, and the biases of that trauma create punitive public policies, and it leaks into AI. That creates a undeserving class, which are BIPOC, religious groups, sexual minorities, etc. Then there isn't enough resources or advocates, so the system gets overwhelmed. That equals into crime, protests, or righteous rebellion being enacted, and then harsher sentencing and increased surveillance state emerges, and then we go back through the loop where unresolved trauma is produced and then more biases increase. So deconstruction and resolution of these systems. So obviously we need solidarity, activism, and citizen unrest. We need advocates, vocalization from these marginalized communities. We need them to speak up and say what the issue is, what their experiences experiencing, so that is known and there is a focus. We need rallies, protests, boycotts, rent strikes. But when it comes to specifically technology, diverse data collection, which is inclusive, diverse, and underrepresented data being added into the system, transparent AI systems that make it easier to understand what is actually happening, what is its use, and how to use it, continuous monitoring, which is just monitoring the technology that's coming up, the old technology, making sure everything is up to date and everything is correct and non-biased. And then also ethical frameworks, which are ethical guidelines and regulations in collaboration with computer science, laws, and social sciences. So more legislation that prevents these issues from rising in technology. So here are some of my sightings. You want to take a look? We use a couple books and articles. Sorry, I'll get there. And then just acknowledgements. I had a couple partners, Kevin Dillon, Aaron Arjunalal, Kobe Jacobs. So they were my predecessors for the research project. And then my current partners, unfortunately, they are in a symposium in Brooklyn, but congratulations to them. They're doing great. Jay Alvarez, Gloria Amanqua, Jonathan Luna, and George Sanz. And a huge appreciation to Dr. Lauren Wolf and Dr. Yoel Rodriguez because they made this opportunity available to us. They gave us the opportunity to do this research, to learn a lot from this, and basically advocate for our findings and hopefully like put information out there that can make a change. Thank you. And I also just wanted to like quickly show a quick poster. So this is from Implicit Biases. We just have a couple of the same images and just like basically everything I went over. This is like the part 2, implicit bias. And then we can just show. And this is for explicit biases in AI. And this one basically goes over more of how the technology is used. There's things called like false negatives or false positives, which are like how, if you can see here, how technology is able to not recognize, but falsely recognize darker skins under like basically bad biases. They'll label them as criminals while lighter or white skin isn't. So that's what this part focuses on more, basically the mathematics and the statistics of the AI and the technology.
Excuse me, so I think they ran over and the issue. I'm not gonna ask you to repeat, but
So
it's great, a great picture, a lot of it.
So it's just basically the unveiling of implicit biases in AI and a focus on the impact on marginalized communities. So simply put, basically the racism, prejudice, and biases from the past are leaking into technology. And we're trying to make that known and show like the findings we saw and how it makes like things like receiving basic benefits like healthcare, food stamps harder, or like even when you go to court or how your criminality is judged. Like you can, through surveillance or like through cameras, they could mislabel you as a criminal, or they could think that you did a crime because of your skin color when it really wasn't you. So just, yeah, like our issues as humans reaching into technology and how we could prevent that and make that known.